Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, reality check. I've been back trying to bend your reality with my shows recently with Howdy Mikowski and Campbell over at Autodidactic. And uh, the reason I'm doing that was because I was reading an article by, I'm going to forget his name now, famous physicist. And he said that we are living in a simulation, and that there would be really only one way to discover that you're living in a simulation, and that would be that the programmers of the simulation would have spent more time on the present and the future in their programming, so they would have spent less time in the past. So therefore, if you can go back and find inconsistencies in the past, then that would be pretty good evidence of a computer simulation. So that's what started me out on this. I read that article about 8 months ago, and I've been ever since looking into it. And I have to say, either we have some really bad historians, and that could be, or we're in a simulation. I don't know. Anyway, every 3 months or so, I bring back Robert Phoenix, the astrologer extraordinaire, and we discuss current events and odd coincidences and all sorts of different things. And well, Robert, last 3 months have been, I'm speechless actually by everything that's just gone down. And so I wanted to get you here after Biden took office. I wanted to make sure that all of that was behind us. Before we get started here, though, I want to tell you, about 2 weeks ago, I got completely tired of all of this, right? And I said, screw it. And I jumped in my car and I went to Sedona for a few days. And then I visited family in San Diego. I had a place on the beach, beautiful weather, 80 degrees. And the beach, which normally would have 50,000 people on it on a Saturday, had 5,000. So it was really nice. And it was 90% people under 30, I would say. And I have to say that this country is not as locked down as they're trying to make us believe. That's all I want to say. Anyway, tell us what you think is going on here.
Well, I mean, you brought up the simulation right at the top here, and I think what we're seeing is the simulation being revealed at a presidential level. And whatever's going on right now with Biden and this administration, and I'll call it a production. It's a production at this point. None of it is real.
Yeah.
The way he ran his campaign wasn't real. It's not even, probably not even the same Biden. Who knows? The guy's got different colored eyes, different earlobes. When he supposedly had his moment of victory, it was revealed that he was on a set. There were all these brand new Jeeps that were there. Nobody was into Jeeps. Then we had in the election itself. I mean, how real can we actually vouch the election to be at this point? And even the efforts to show people how rigged and how stolen the election was, even a lot of that stuff didn't seem very real. I mean, when I talked about this yesterday, actually it was 2 days ago, I talked about how if they really wanted to prove that the election was stolen, like they went about it like completely bass backwards.
Yes,
Like they could have created a website. They could have put all that information on a central place, on a website where people could have gone. They could have seen everything. They could have seen all the testimony. Trump could have streamed off that website every single night. Every single night. They could have subverted Twitter, Facebook. They could have done it, but they didn't do it. Instead, it was like the Keystone Cops, and they're running all over the place. Then you've got
fake fantasies and people making stuff up like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Whatever, Lynn Wood. I mean, my God, man, what are you? He has to be an operator of some kind.
Well, I'm not even sure he's even Lynn Wood anymore. Again, we're living in this world, especially bringing into some astrology. We got the true node in Gemini,
Yeah.
and we're living in this strange world of like bifurcation and mirrors. And so I've looked at footage. I think it came from a German website where they have a camera crew, which is actually filming the Oval Office. And it's not even the Oval Office, it's a sound stage. It's a total sound stage. There are pictures, they're on the internet, you can find them. There are pictures of Trump in the Oval Office, and there are pictures of Biden in the Oval Office. It's not the same office. The
In
curtains are
fact, an
deep.
article about that.
Yeah,
Politico, maybe, I can't remember, but how Biden immediately rearranged the entire Oval Office to be different. And it's like, come on, man.
no, you don't do it that quickly. I mean, wallpaper takes time.
Days.
Like to get wallpaper off of a wall, anybody who's ever had to do that, they know how difficult that is. And then to set it right without any kind of wrinkles and have everything line up, you got to know what you're doing. And it was like, okay, this guy's out, this guy's in, and they've got new wallpaper, which by the way doesn't look new. And the background of the Oval Office looks like there's like
Yeah.
a parking lot or something going on there.
The bushes are gone, and it's like,
Yeah.
what's
And
going on?
I just saw a feed from today, just before we got on the air. Just before we started doing this, I saw a feed from the White House. It's completely empty. There's like nobody there. No one is there. And it even like the time of the inauguration, I think was 11:41 a.m. So he was being inaugurated while Trump was still president. Like there's no precedent for this. He shows up in to Washington D.C. in a private jet. Trump is on Air Force One to Mar-a-Lago. Like, what's going on here? The whole thing is so bizarre. And then you have all these troops who are supposedly there and sleeping in parking garages. Yeah, I mean, so I think part of what's going, and this ties into what you're talking about and the bigger picture. I've been every now and then when I'm at a gym, I don't seek out watching pro sports anymore, but it'll be on in the background. And I'll look at an NBA game and there's nobody in the freaking stands. And it's like they've turned this live event into a studio only kind of affair. They did the same thing with pro football, so they're sort of signaling the simulation. They're signaling that that's what we're in. And I don't even know who's really president. I don't even know who's running this country right now. And even
I do, but I don't think I can say it.
well, okay, yeah, I hear you. But even at the executive orders. Now we're gonna maybe give it a couple days, but none of those. No, he called them. He being whoever Biden is, called them executive actions. Okay, well, they're an executive action before they're an executive order. And if you go onto the White House's website, none of those have been filed. The last one that was filed came from
That's right.
Trump, and
Yeah.
what about what, a month and a half ago or something like that.
Then there's
Anyway,
then there's him walking past the Marines and saying, "Salute the Marines,"
salute the Marines.
and that was clearly an earpiece or
Yeah.
something that he got fumbled on. So and he clearly had wires in his sleeve at the debate, the last debate anyway. So I would say he's got a voice in his head, just like Bush did,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole thing was rigged.
Yeah. So now we're living, and this is where it gets tricky. Oh, by the way, he sent home Congress and just said, we don't need you guys now. Right? It's like, oh, you're not going to vote on anything. You're just going to sign these executive actions, and maybe they'll become executive orders. We don't know. And there is, while all that stuff is, I think, fairly clear, and completely disconcerting. On the other hand, there's a very real threat that when people like John Brennan start talking about laser-like focus on extremist groups and patriots and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that stuff is real. That stuff is very real. So they've got this weird kind of like okie doke going on. Like they're projecting something that's not there. And on the other hand, they've got this whole other reality that they're lining up, and they'll make that as real as they possibly can.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that, and the whole thing even goes back to what happened at the, at the Capitol on the 6th of January.
Yep.
And what was that all about? You
That
know?
was that was the Reichstag fire of our country, and it was actually in reverse. So the Reichstag, the Nazis burned the building down. I shouldn't have used that word. I regret it now. The Germans, who favored that one guy with the weird mustache, they burned it down and then blamed the communists. This is exact opposite. But you also have to consider the fact that Trump may be part of this.
Well, that's the one thing that a lot of people who are and have supported Trump, that is the kryptonite. They don't want to go there, and that's a part that that would really be sort of the the final knife in the back and be complete and utter demoralization. Again, the narrative now is that he's going to return on March 4th. They're just going to keep moving the goalposts, right? They're going to keep moving the goalposts, and who knows what will happen between now and March 4th with a fake government or whatever this thing that they've installed is. I have no idea. I have no idea what it is, but I do think they're signaling that we're in a simulation.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that I think one of the goals of the simulation is for us to realize that we're in a simulation, and if that happens, and so they're running the simulation probably to solve problems, right? So they throw different stuff at us to find out how we react, so they know so probably the humans are behind the simulation, is what I'm saying, and that the whole point of the simulation is to run scenarios and see what happens. So in the reality of the people who are programming us, they can then do the right thing. And so that's what I think is going on, and we're being thrown these different realities. And at the same time, there's a lot of very curious people going back through the archives of our history and finding out a lot of really, really weird stuff that we were never told about. And that actually is in direct contradiction. I posted on my Facebook page about 2 weeks ago a drawing from must have been 1600s of two Native Americans hunting with bow and arrow near the San Francisco Bay Area, and they were black. They were black. They weren't like dark. They were African Americans. They were clearly African Americans. And this was a Dutch artist who drew it. And, you just got to wonder, what's going on here? And the more I look at it, the more I'm convinced that we are in a simulation.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting because I had Ross Ben, who's done a lot of interesting stuff on the city of Philadelphia and William Penn and this whole inversion that took place. And he had a really interesting presentation on the 13 Baktuns from basically Kemet to Jamestown. And he gets into a lot of the history of Western Europe, where it seems to be like really Moorish, right?
Right.
Like a very Moorish kind of population in Western Europe. Now, what's interesting, and this is what he talks about inside of his presentation, is that, and he doesn't really say it explicitly, but he's basically saying that the Moors were slave traders. That's what he was saying. He was slave traders, and he's making this, and I'm not sure it's a correct correlation. We didn't really get to talk about it, but I would like to talk to him about it. That the correlation of that was that there was some kind of karmic interchange that took place, and then what happened in Jamestown, was sort of the karmic boomerang that they had to experience what they themselves had actually done. But that was 400 years ago, and then now that cycle is over. And there is some interesting validity to that on some level, because it feels like, of course, these roles are being reversed again.
They are.
Yeah, and now, you know, we're living out that movie with Harry Belafonte and John Travolta, which is, you know, White Man's Burden, that film, which is predictive programming, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. I was told by a very high up person in Hollywood that I've known for years that the rule came down about 6 months ago: no more white males in front or behind the camera. It's over.
Right.
Done.
Yep.
So you won't see any white males. If you do, they'll be ugly and have weird hair. That's another thing I've noticed, that
Yep.
they pick them for their ugliness. And that's another thing that seems to be going on. But I want to get to the astrology, because I do want to talk about what you're talking about right now, but I want to wait till later, because the great replacement is real, and we need to show people, because I don't watch sports anymore, except I did watch the playoff games last weekend, uh, and the ads were really odd, very, very odd. In fact, the ads were more interesting than the games. But anyway, what's going on in astrology right now that's causing all this, or reflecting this, or whatever it is, this weird time we're in?
Well, I think it's Aquarius. I mean, we had the super conjunction on the 21st of December, and the last time you and I talked, this is one of the things that we talked about. And it, and if we could just go to January 6th, that's a perfect example of the super conjunction in action.
Right.
So theoretically, what you have is you have these people who want to theoretically revolt, right? Like Trump led a revolutionary sort of party and a revolutionary sort of movement, right? The revolution was, hey, look, we're tired of people telling us what to think, what to do, what to say, and there's our guy. This is our guy, and we're all in, right? And I don't care whether you're on the right or the left. When you're in a revolutionary movement, that's Aquarian. Aquarius is revolutionary. Adam Weishaupt was an Aquarian. Okay, Gene Sharp, who started the color revolutions, is an Aquarian, and we've been in a color revolution. We've been in a color revolution since the day after Trump got elected, and we've been in the purple revolution, and now we're in the purple reign, REIGN, which is when I've talked about this before. The symbol of that is Prince, and Prince is a Gemini, and he died on April 21st, which is the Queen's birthday, and it was 202 days after that Donald Trump got elected. And where did George Floyd show up? George Floyd showed up in the Twin Cities. You know, what are the Twin Cities? Gemini. You know, what month did he show up in? Gemini. That's when George Floyd's event happened. George Floyd theoretically had a twin, Stephen Jackson. Stephen Jackson called George Floyd, he's my twin. So all this stuff, I've been talking about this for about 2 years now. When the George Floyd thing came up, and then what color light did they bathe all the George Floyd memorials in? It's purple, right? And what does Kamala Harris show up in on her first day, you know, the White House? She's wearing purple. None of that. She looks like a grown-up version of Lisa Simpson from The Simpsons, who becomes president. It's the same outfit. I mean, where does this stuff end, right? So anyway, we have this Jupiter Gemini thing. People are like, yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go. And then that gets infiltrated. I'm sorry, Jupiter Aquarius. That gets infiltrated. We have the true node in Gemini, which is you don't know who's who. You don't know who's who or what's what or what's going on. And even when you look at, like, there's this guy, John L. Sullivan, who most people who follow this stuff know about. You know, he's got an Uber commercial, which I wasn't aware of. Did you know that, Jay?
I didn't.
He's got a freaking Uber commercial where he's a speed skater, and he's like the nice guy driving down the highway with his two dudes in back, right? And he says, "Hi, I'm John L. Sullivan. I'm a speed skater, and I work for Uber." I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Anyway, he's at the White House, or he's there, right? He's inside, and but he's inside the rotunda, and he's with this other guy, and supposedly he's with this woman who works for CNN, and they're inside. But then he's also on the stairwell, videotaping the whole thing. He goes by Jaden X with his video moniker. And by the way, Jaden X was showing up a lot when they were doing a lot of the live feeds when Antifa was burning everything down. So how does he show up in two places at once? Or did that event on the stairwell happen at a different time? And
Yeah.
and there are a lot of unanswered questions about that stairwell event.
Isn't the carpeting that leads into the rotunda area, isn't that purple?
I think it is.
Crowd was going down. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stayed within the posts. I like that.
Yeah, they did. They were very respectful.
Yes.
And then you've got Q Shaman guy, who is like, I've come to the conclusion that he's the most interesting person out of this whole thing.
Probably.
I mean, because he did an interview with Laura Eisenhower. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I mean, look, he could be on your show. He could be on my show. The guy knows this stuff, chapter and verse, right? Chapter and freaking verse. Yeah. And who knows where he came from or really what he's about. He's another one of these characters who just all of a sudden kind of shows up, right? Yep. And there's pictures with him and Rudy Giuliani. There's pictures with him and Nancy Pelosi's son-in-law. Yep. I mean, there's a big, WTF moment. He gets ushered right into the White House or the Senate chambers there. And the cop brings him right in. Astrologically, we've got Mars in Taurus, which is the bull, right? We've got Uranus in Taurus. They're conjunct. They're squaring off against all these Aquarian planets. So he's there. And then there's the bullhorn, which is, then that bullhorn he did not bring in. That bullhorn was there on the desk, right? So we've got all this bull imagery. We've got the Buffalo Bills, right? Which are, bison, like a bull. We're the year of the ox, which is, kind of bull-like. So there's a lot of really interesting symbolism going down here. Yeah. And yeah. So, but what happened is that you have this Jupiterian moment, which is like expansive, but because there were a lot of squares going on that day, the Mars-Uranus conjunction squaring off against, the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. So these are dynamic and they're not easily reconcilable. And there were other planets in Aquarius at the time as well. Mercury was in Aquarius too. And you look at that event and you go, holy Christ, as an astrologer, I talked about this, like, this is going to get ugly. This thing is going to get really ugly and weird, right? So then what happens? So then you have Saturn in Aquarius coming in over the top of it and wanting to have more systems of control, right? So it's this dynamic where Jupiter or this Jupiterian kind of expansion is, and then they come in and say, okay, Parler, you're down, you're off YouTube, Fox News, we're going to take you down. We're just going to silence every single voice of dissent. That's Saturn, right? That is Saturn. And we're going to have this dynamic throughout the year. And this is a dynamic that is going to be with us for the next 20 years. So we're trying to create something new. Something new is trying to emerge. And yet this gets into the whole reset thing. But it's like, okay, no, we're gonna just, put a ceiling on this. We're going to put a lid on this. Where did we hear that before? I didn't really hear put a lid on it until Joe Biden ran for president. We're putting a lid on the evening. I never heard that before. Oh, he put a lid on it tonight. Well, this is some of the language that they're really referring. They're putting a lid on, the 20th century, the last 200 years, last 400.
Putting a lid on it. It's exactly
putting a lid on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the end of everything that we were doing. It's that we're not going to have any. They've done it. I mean, it's over. Even our little community is like, you can see it slowly being corroded and destroyed because everybody has to stay home and we can't go to concerts anymore, or go meet in the park or anything. I mean, we can, but we don't know if we're going to get somebody who's going to call the sheriff on us or something. And, I mean, I'm even worried about my own neighbors. If I have too many people here or too many cars at my house calling in, because they're terrified, right? So, yeah, before the Great Reset was called the Great Reset, you and I talked about the Great Reset months and months before anybody heard about the Bond villain, Schwab, or whatever his name is,
Right.
that perfectly cast as a Bond villain. And and now it's coming to pass, and it's coming to pass at such a breathtaking speed that, again, going back to those ads, it's clearly obvious that meat is on its way out. They are, first off, they're going to make the meat available so gross that nobody's going to want to eat it. And then two, they're just going to replace it with plant-based, which I know a lot of people are for and all that. I'm not particularly for it, but it's well known that when the the when the Muslims took over India, the first thing they did was outlaw eating cows, and they specifically said in their literature that it was done to weaken the people. That way, they'd be in a permanently weak state. And of course, they kept eating it. So I don't know if that's the plan, but I know that the predictions for the Moshiach to return may be coming true, and the Noahide laws may be becoming enacted. And most of the Noahide laws are fine. I'm cool with most of them. It's that last one, number 7. I just can't get behind. They want to create a world court, and I don't want that. I like our jurisprudence here. But anyway, so the Great Reset is really upon us now. This is it. And when you read the literature from the World Economic Forum and all that, or you watch their videos about the Great Reset, they're really not saying anything. They're saying, well, we're going to fight poverty and we're going to be good for the environment. But the underlying tone is that they're going to use all these things, fighting poverty and protecting the environment, to bring about a very draconian future. A future where, as Danny Estulin said on my show here a few months ago, he said that if Uncle Joe gets elected, then they made their choice. Okay, he said that there was a choice for the rulers, and that one choice was to free everybody up and let the expansion continue, or the other one, if Uncle Joe got it, was death. Essentially said it was death. And he lived in the former Soviet Union, where literally 20 million people died after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And, people think it was a great event. Well, it was in some ways, but also a lot of people died. I mean, he said the graveyards just filled up. Like, you didn't even notice it. You pretty soon just got used to it. Oh yeah, he died. Oh yeah, he died. And that's beginning to happen, even in my own life. I'm actually, oh yeah, the guy, he died. Oh really? He was only 52 and he died? That's kind of strange. And so, I'm not trying to cause fear, but I'm a little apprehensive about what's happening right now.
Yeah, well, yes, I think there's a good reason to be a little unsettled about this whole thing, because you don't have to dig too deep and it becomes unsettling. And even people who are like supposedly on the left, and they're celebrating this thing, that it was some kind of a great victory or something like that. Even if I was on the left, there's like nothing that I could really like feel like. I would have to manufacture an emotional response in some ways, right? And it would be kind of a simulacra of emotion, because deep down inside you would know, you would think you would know, that the thing was stolen and rigged, and that this guy has no absolute business being president of the United States, let alone president of the bingo club at the old folks home. Okay, I mean, but they're going to look the other way. They're going to swallow the pill, and they're going to celebrate. But it's a simulacra. And I've been thinking about this. If you go back and look at a lot of the shootings that we had over the last, I don't know, 6 years, right? I would try to feel into these things, and I would feel nothing, because in most cases, I think nothing happened. I'm not saying that that's true for every single event. Maybe
Nope.
some events were kind of a mix. Maybe some events were real, and there were some didn't happen, right? And you look at some of the people, like for instance, let's take the Santa Barbara thing.
Oh
Santa,
man, that was the that was the worst
right,
of all of them.
right,
That was the worst.
right.
Even the Hollywood cinematography was unbelievable. I mean, it was unbelievable.
I actually lost a couple of friends over that one, because they were friends with Peter Roger, who is the father of Elliot Roger,
Right.
and Peter Roger being what? A cinematographer
Yes.
who worked on the Hunger Games,
She did.
right? But one of the key people in that, besides Elliot Roger, the incel, was this guy named Martinez,
All right.
and he was going to fight for his son's, the loss of his, tragic loss of his son, until the end of time. Well, have we ever heard anything since
Nope.
from Mr. Martinez, his dedicated father, who was so incensed by his son's untimely death that you're going to be sure to hear from him all the time? Look, what about the thing? One more. I got one more here. What about that thing in Roanoke, Virginia, with the news reporter and the strange guy who supposedly ran up to them and shoot him, and then her father comes out. And what does her father do? Her father is an actor. And he says the same thing that this Martinez guy says about his son, makes the same proclamations. And where is he? Right? Nowhere. And so after a while, you don't feel anything with these events. There's nothing there. And yet people had to manufacture emotion because they were told that this thing was tragic. Right?
Oh, in that vein, thinking that same way, a couple of years ago, I went back to, I believe it was a San Diego in the 80s, where a guy shot up a McDonald's and killed about 20 people. I don't know if you remember that or not, but it was a horrendous event. And I started looking into it and reading as many articles as I could about the event. And same thing, dude, about, I don't know, 2 hours into my investigation, I'm going, wait a minute here. They've been doing this stuff since the 80s?
Oh,
I think they have. I think they have.
I would say, and I'm gonna go right out on a limb here, and utter a total blasphemy. I think the terror event at the Munich Olympics was staged. I don't think it ever happened. I mean, it happened, but it didn't happen the way they said it was going to happen.
That's right. People died for sure.
Yeah,
but not the way that they said it. And that's why Spielberg made that film, by the way. Yeah. And that, because it was like avoiding the event, you might say, and concentrating on the aftermath of the event, right? Or rearranging the way we think about everything. And I'm afraid you're right. And that's why I don't believe anything anymore. That's the weird thing. That's why I took this trip. I wanted to actually go out into the world and see what was going on in this world. And outside of people wearing masks everywhere, pretty much nothing's changed. I mean, the businesses are staying open that are open. A lot of them have shut down. And people are going to the beach, and people are walking around, and people are exercising and surfing and everything. So what they're showing us on TV is not really what's going on.
Right.
Strange. It was a strange event to do it, because everybody's like, oh, don't go. There's going to be a revolution while you're gone, and Trump's going to call martial law, and you're going to die of COVID. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think any of that's going to happen. And nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
So
I think ultimately what they want to do is they want to just completely suck any meaning and any kind of stimulation out of the physical world.
They do.
And they want to make it so uninteresting and so boring, and beyond boring, even oppressive, that the only way to escape will be through the virtual world. And that's going to happen. They're going to offer that up. And it's like, what? Well, hey, you can be anything you want in this world. You could, and again, this is very Aquarian, right? We're dealing with these Aquarian ideas of augmented reality, virtual reality. So it's like, well, hey, why don't you leave that matrix and come over to this matrix where it's a lot more fun. You can be anything you want.
It's already gotten more boring.
Yeah.
Since Joe got in. It's boring as hell. You
Yeah.
go to the news is boring, YouTube is boring. There's nothing interesting at all going on, and this is like, to me, the great boredom has come on us. And I know it's not going to be boring because they're going to pass a lot of draconian legislation. I don't know if anyone's going to obey the law anymore. That's the other thing. No one's obeying the law anymore.
Right.
And even the cops aren't even enforcing the law anymore in most cases. So
in most cases, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where we're headed. It's the weirdest friggin' time I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. It's very strange, and it's unfortunate because there was this kind of upwelling of people that were trying to go down the rabbit hole, find the truth, and there were a lot of different characters that showed up in the process, and some of which could be trustworthy. Like, I think you're trustworthy. I've always, believed, I've always respected your work. I mean, we're here. This is why we're here, right?
Yeah.
It's like, Jay's trustworthy. There are other people that came up along, the sort of the truth trail in the past year or so. It's like, who are these people? Like, where did they come from? Like Charlie Ward. Like, who is this guy?
Who is he?
Who is he? Why is he important? Who's promoting him? He's got a whole website. Join his. Like, who the fuck is Charlie Ward? I don't know who this guy is.
Either.
But they have this echo chamber.
Yeah.
And it's like Robert David Steele and Charlie Ward and Simon Parks and Sasha Stone and
oh my god,
and they just keep promulgating their own
BS fantasies,
and it's their own cacophony, and they repeat it so much. They repeat it so much that people begin to believe it's true.
I posted on my Facebook about and I said Q was a psyop. Yeah. And I put and David Wilcock and Jordan Sather and Corey Good, and they all were played into the psyop, or they were part of the psyop. I got so much negative response to that because people want to believe that Q is real. It wasn't real. It was a government psyop to make you stand down. That was the point. Trust the plan. It was all BS. I knew it from the start. I never supported it. And I was still, to this day, I was like, and it's had a terrible effect, like Simon Parks and these other idiots. I'm sorry, but
I mean, if you're really looking at Simon Parks to get inside intel into what's happening in the United States, like, you're really way off the path. I'm sorry, you're way off the trail. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about Q is Q shows up right around the time of the Las Vegas shooting with Stephen Paddock.
If you think about that, yeah, exactly 31 days later. That happened on the 1st, and Q came out on Halloween.
That's right, October 31st. That's right. Yep. So it's like, okay, well, right after it happened, I started to look at it, because one of the things that came out was that somebody basically predicted what was going to happen in Las Vegas, and somehow it was either connected to Q or Tracy Beans. It was like, there was like this weird thing going on at that time. And I was like, okay, well, let me look into this. Let me see what's going on here. And it took me, I don't know, maybe about 3 weeks, maybe a month at the most. I'm like, I don't trust this thing at all. Like, this is not good.
No,
it's not good, because what it did is it began to undercut real researchers.
That's right.
It became like the McDonald's of the truth movement.
It did. That's great.
And part of me resented that, to be honest with you.
Me too.
Yeah, resented it. And I tried to talk about it early on, and boy, did I get shot down. I got shot down really hard.
Shot down for talking like what we are right now. I guarantee it. They'll be in the comments. Everybody, oh, you guys, you working for the I don't know. The Jesuits.
Well, so I've been thinking about like, well, where do we go after this, right?
Yeah, where do we go?
Where do we go?
Heading
And
towards 2024, which is going to be a zinger of a year. Not
oh,
only is it going to
2020,
be an
yes,
election,
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
going to be like crazy, from the
Mhm.
eclipse to the 4 planets lining up on one side and
Yep. Yeah.
that year.
2024 is going to be a doozy. And that's when we go into that Saturn Neptune conjunction,
Man,
ultimately with Saturn in Pisces and Neptune. It's right at the end when
yes,
Saturn is in Pisces. But
right.
then we get the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, which I actually think is going to be kind of interesting. Like, I think that's an interesting time. And that's when we begin to make a shift. I think there's a major shift that takes place right around then. And I'll tell you a person to watch out for during that period of time is Tulsi Gabbard.
I
I
was just
think
going to say that. She's
Tul-
clearly moving towards becoming a Republican.
Tulsi Gabbard will be president of the United
I
States, whatever
agree.
the United States looks like at some point in time.
I agree. I think she's the most dynamic politician in years,
Yeah.
years.
She's
And
being groomed. She's being groomed as well. And astrologically, that's the time. I know her chart. She's big Aries. That's going to be her time.
if she
But
continues talking like she's talking, she's got me. I mean that. I mean, I love what I'm hearing from her. So, you know,
yep, she's got the right talking points. Um,
I
what was I going
predict
to say?
I predict she becomes a Republican.
Oh, yeah. Or what'll happen, and this is possible, is that maybe she pops into this like unity party that the Weinstein brothers have been cooking up. Right. That's the other sort of like X factor in this thing. And they were doing a lot of kind of workshopping and experimenting and modeling coming up into the election. And, I'm not sure how I feel about those guys. I'm not sure how I feel about the alt-right. I definitely, I'm not a huge fan of Dan Crenshaw. That's a guy that just reeks of complete internationalist, globalist.
Yeah.
He's also, by the way, a candidate for the Antichrist, because the Antichrist is supposed to have like one eye,
Oh yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
So, yeah. Anyway, that's just a little weird little tidbit. But where do we go? Well, one of the things that we need to do is, while I think it's important to understand this idea of 1776, because we are in the Pluto return of the United States, we have to expand that idea, or that, not necessarily that model, but we have to make it bigger, and we have to make it more inclusive. And we have to, have conversations with people like Ross Ben, and we've got to be able to build a more sort of dynamic kind of consciousness that has some of these things that are important, but also has something that's transcendent and can be more Aquarian and hopeful in some ways, right? Because they just killed whatever happened. Like, that's done. And
It is.
that's not going to come back.
This
Sorry.
way with Hank Aaron.
Hank Aaron, who's an Aquarian, by the way.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, Hammer and Hank. So that's it. I mean, so we're going to have to build something new, and it's got to be different, right? And different in a way that is unassailable. It's different in a way it doesn't have the same symbols. It doesn't have the same kind of language. It doesn't have the same kind of baggage. And I think they were trying to, whoever they are, were trying to include some of that in QAnon, and that's where Mr. Buffalo Shaman guy comes up, and
Right.
because there's right, but I think we even have to go beyond that in some ways. And you, Howdy and I had a really interesting experience because I had him on my show, and
Yeah, it's
it was
good
a
show.
great guest. And so I've had these things happen while I've done my live stream, where this like interesting light and presence has shown up a couple of times during my live streams. Howdy had it happen to him last week, and he noticed it. He said, "Did you see that? Did you?" I had the same thing happen. I had it happen at least twice, maybe three times. So I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. Like, what's going on here? Like, what is going on here? Why did that happen to him? Why has it happened to me? There's something, this is the thing that I think is I think this is not that phenomena means something, but I think it does. I think it means something to me. It means something to Howdy. We're going to talk about it. My sense is, and I hope this doesn't sound too airy fairy, but my sense is that something is trying to get in contact with us. Something is trying to connect with us. And in that moment, it connected with how many other people I had. It connected with how many other people Howdy had. And maybe there are other people that are sort of in this same kind of, I don't know, group or wave. And it's interesting because Howdy and I come from a very similar place in a lot of ways. So I think this is another part of the story, that there is an emergent reality. And if we can begin to step away from a lot of the baggage and the symbols and the script, we might be able to get in touch with something that's very different.
Well, I think
Because
that you say that because all over the world are these people are videotaping and photographing these odd lights that are in the sky. They're clearly not hardwired UFOs. They're plasma or something. And it's like, it's really increasing. And it may be because the diminishing electromagnetic field is now the buffer is going, and now the ethereal spirits, if I may, have an easier way in. And I can feel it. I got to be honest with you, I can feel it. I knew nothing bad was going to happen during those 2 weeks I was gone. I knew it, and I begun realizing about 6 months ago that I am highly psychic, and then that made me trust my intuition more. And then I started having hit after hit, like I've never had in my life. And then I asked other people around me. I said, "Do you feel like you're possibly getting more psychic lately?" And everybody's, "Yes, I do." And everybody is saying it. And so I think that there is something going on. And I think that may actually know that the diminishing electromagnetic field has some kind of effect on our etheric body. I'll call it that. And that's why they did all this, to get ahead of it, get in front of it, so that they could stop it. But I don't think it can be stopped.
That's a really great point. And they've done this before, right? I mean, they pull the curtain down, and then out comes the reset. And I think now they're in competition with something else. It's like, whatever that something else is, it's like, okay, whatever that something else is, it's like, okay, we're going to up the ante here, and we're going to begin to communicate and influence this so-called reality in a way that will be a competitive model to your influence, or that influence, or this influence.
Yes. Yeah. I had the author of, I forget his name now. He was about right after our last show, Quest for the Invisibles. I can't remember his name, but he's a guy from England, and he photographs these things. You can't see him with your naked eye, but Trevor Constable, I don't know if you know who he is. He used to photograph them too. And they're all over us, but I think right now they are trying to contact us. I really truly believe that they sense our desperation, maybe, or maybe we're just open to it now. You know, you're old enough too. I'm old enough to know that the languaging that's going on, especially today, is wildly different than the languaging that was going on just 10 years ago. People are absolutely not just accepting that there's extra normal powers and spirits. They're using it in their everyday language now. It used to be kind of where you had to whisper about it or something, but now it's like, well, yeah, you know, I got in touch with my future self. It told me to do this, so I'm doing it, you know, and you're like, well, this is quite interesting how the language has shifted, and I think that's a good thing. And once you understand that there's these negative entities and that they can enter people and influence them, that goes a long way towards understanding reality and not allowing these things to happen to you. And we're bifurcating. It's clearly obvious. We're bifurcating into two different species. Nostradamus predicted that this would happen, by the way. And where one species is going to be a automaton, and the other one is going to be a natural
Yep.
species. And
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
return to psychedelics and growing your own food and hanging out with your family and friends and playing music together. That's the future that we want, not the future of the transhumanisms. And I think we're at that choice right now. And they're forcing, that's what the vaccines are about. They're
Yep.
forcing the transhumanism on us. Elon Musk says he's not taking it. I'm pretty sure I'm not taking it. So, you know, I've said now for the last 2 months, the Civil War is not between left and right. It's not between liberals and conservatives. It's going to be between the vaxxers and the no vaxxers. And that's actually the dividing line between the bifurcation.
Yep.
The anti-vaxxers choose a natural way, or they choose to get sick. It's fine. We got sick. So what? People get sick. People die. It's a normal thing. It's a normal part of life. And, you know, the damn baby boomers are so afraid of dying. I gotta believe a part of this whole BS is about that psychology, about the pampered.
Well, a lot of millennials are afraid of dying too.
Well, they are.
They're at the other end of the spectrum, and they've got Pluto and Scorpio. So, you know, they have to deal with this thing around death, right?
Right.
And
well,
what's interesting, those two generations, by the way, astrologically, they square each other, right? Leo, because most baby boomers are born with Pluto and Leo, and the millennials, Pluto and Scorpio. Astrology, that's a hard square. It's a fixed square. They don't mesh. And what's interesting is I read this article today on HuffPost. It was this young woman who works as a barista outside of Bozeman, Montana, just outside of it. So she's getting a lot of, like, you know, guys with guns that show up at her place, and her place has the mask mandate, right? So the guys that are coming in there are not wearing the mask, and she must have written, I think, about 3,500 words, maybe 4,000 words about her experience, about how hard her life is as a barista because these guys don't want to wear their masks. And I'm like, really? Well, why don't you just get a new fucking job, right? Why don't you just go to you know, it's not like a barista is somebody who has highly specialized skills. I'm sure there's another place in Bozeman where you can go where everybody is willing to wear a mask. But instead, she turned this thing into a freaking, you know, like testament. Yeah. But the idea is, like, look at me, look at how hard this is for me, look at how difficult this is for me, instead of just, you know, just change your reality, just go do something different, right?
Yeah, they can't do that. And you know, I'll say this about, you know, I'm not a right winger, I'm not a left winger. I believe the whole thing's just theater anyway. But I have noticed one thing: left wingers don't want to be happy. I don't know what it is about them. I've got a lot of left wing friends. They just don't want to be happy. It's weird. They're not happy that Biden got elected. They're not really. They're not happy. And you can almost tell someone's political beliefs by how unhappy they are.
Yeah.
And, yeah. I got accosted by a Karen coming out of a Natural Grocers the other day. It was a really cold day, and I had the door open, and I guess it was her car next to me, so I was blocking it while I was loading the groceries into my car, right? And she goes, "You're blocking my way." And I thought to myself, why are you so unhappy? You know, I'm just I'll be done with the groceries in like 10 seconds, you know, and you can get in your car. You didn't have to yell at me, right?
Right.
Chose to, and you could just see the unhappiness on her face. And I thought to myself, that's gotta be, you know, one of these really unhappy left people. And I don't know if she's left or not, but I just think they are. And I can, you know, and I don't think people on the right are necessarily happy, but they seem happier than the people on the left to me. They seem like they're not as willing to go into a depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that defines a lot of it. So if you're a really depressed person, then you need a lot of help. And if you're not a depressed person, then you probably don't need much help. So that kind of forges your political views, I think.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. By the way, not every millennial is like that. Millennials seem to be very split. Like they're they're either all in on one thing or all in on another thing.
Yep.
So I don't. This is not a blanket condemnation of
No, in
millennials.
fact, there's a lot of really entrepreneurial millennials that are doing really good work and making a lot of money
Yeah,
and doing something with their lives. And then there's a bunch of millennials, and I know them, who absolutely refuse to work. They
yeah,
don't want to work, and they'll be right to your face. I'm not working. You say, I'll give you $20 an hour. Nope, nope, nope. Sorry, not doing it. So
yeah.
they are split, and the ones that aren't working are going to be on the losing end of it. I'll tell you that.
The thing that you're talking about with like the unhappy part of like quote being a liberal or a lefty, if you look at the ideology and what it's based on, it's always based on change. Like there's always going to be something in the future, which is, the communist,
Yep.
basically the communist carrot at the end of the stick, right?
Right.
And we're always going to be going through this revolution, and things are going to change, and things are going to change, and things are going to change. And even when Obama was there and theoretically there was change, like really, how did that work out?
Not very
And how, not very well. And how happy were they then?
no.
Probably for, maybe 6 months or so. But after that, things got very real. And it was like, wow, I'm really not that happy. Right. And this is what happens. There's this ideology of something's always going to be better in the future
Right.
versus being better in the now.
That's right.
And I think the conservatives are kind of more tuned to the now in some ways, right? They're not
more conservatives are more systems oriented.
right,
Liberals are more results oriented. Conservatives believe that, yeah, they may even believe in the same result as the liberal, but they do not choose to take the path of just ramming it in. You gotta run it through the system.
liberals are process oriented. That's what I think.
Yeah.
They are process oriented. Whereas I think again, yes, conservatives are much more systematic and
Yep.
think things through. Yes. But when you're process oriented, you're always kind of like everybody's been in a relationship at least once where you do like a process, right? And you never get to a point where you're actually like enjoying each other's company. And in a lot of ways, that's a model.
Yeah.
And
Right.
but these things are ending. I mean, ultimately they get played out, and a lot of the scripts that we've had as part of that time that we're coming away from or out of, they're running out, right? They're just going to be running out, and eventually people are going to have a very small circle of influence in their life.
Yep.
And there's going to be no real, and again, this is what Klaus Schwab wants. This is what the reset legions want. They don't want any innovation. They don't want any imagination. They don't want any creativity. And the way that stuff happens, you have dynamic interchange with people. You have dynamic interchange with situations. You don't just go off into your own little, bubble. You don't go off into your own little mask world. So, we're going to get through this time. I feel like by the end of this decade, we're going to be in a very different place.
Yeah.
It's going to be a better place. I'm not sure everybody's going to be there for it,
Right.
but
Right.
So really quick before we sign off, there's one thing I did want to say,
Yeah.
and it's really gotten my attention. This gets back to this idea that something wants to kind of get in touch with us. So I use the Sabian symbols a lot when I do astrology, and the Sabian symbols were created by this woman named Elsie Wheeler and Mark Edmund Jones, and this was back I think early 30s in San Diego at Balboa Park. And Elsie Wheeler was this trance medium, and theoretically channeled these symbols. And on the surface, they're pretty two-dimensional. But Dane Rudhyar, I think, has done the best work with the Sabian symbols. And right now, Neptune is approaching 19 Pisces. And the Sabian symbol for 19 Pisces is a master instructs the disciple. Okay. So right now, this degree of Neptune is very interesting because of where it is. It's also in square right now with the true node in Gemini and then the south node in Sagittarius. And we've been going through this hall of mirrors with Gemini, and the south node in Sagittarius. Laws don't mean anything anymore, right? The laws. So now we have this Neptune square going on, and the degree now is the master instructs the disciple.
Interesting.
So I think this is a time where if people can tune in, however you do it, right? If you can just kind of tune in and step away from the
The mayhem.
the mayhem, step away from the QAnon stuff for a
Yeah,
while,
please.
step away from what Trump is going to do,
Yep.
and just tune in for a little bit and
Absolutely.
try to get in touch with something else,
I agree with
because,
that.
because that they want you to hang on to the QAnon line for as long as you can, right? They don't want you to like figure out that there's a third way or maybe even a fourth way. And so this is, I think, an important time for that.
I agree. And people had all of 2020 to kind of relearn everything. And now I think we're going to go into a period where I really actually really truly believe that there are some kind of presences trying to contact us, positive presences, because I can feel them. And feels very protecting, actually.
Yeah.
And I think everyone needs to call on whatever it is that you believe, and ask for that protection, because you're going to need it now and from now on. And anyway, it's a great note to end the program on, because at least it's positive and it's coming from somewhere else. And I don't know, I just feel it. That's all. I go by my feelings now. It's like I don't feel that Joe Biden is my president. I just don't. I cannot break that spell. I don't feel it. I mean, I know Trump's not my president,
Right.
but I don't feel that Biden is my president. I just don't. It's like,
Right.
I don't. So I don't know what to say. When I see him, I'm like, who is that guy?
Well, that's the other thing. People are not watching Fox News anymore.
No.
Like their ratings have tanked. CNN
Good.
beat them.
Good.
But even if you're a so-called liberal or progressive and you're looking for Don Lemon or Anderson Cooper or Brian Stelter to give you your news, like even that sort of drip line is going to get
Oh,
really
they're dead. They're going to die.
old. There's nothing there.
There's nothing.
So
It's,
and they may try to create the white boogeyman or this group or that group, but again, there's going to be very little traction with it. There's going to be very little gravity. There's going to be very little physical kind of um, presence. It'll all be virtual. You may glom onto it for a moment or two, but there's going to be nothing there. So
I don't
that
like
ability to put people in a spell and try to tell that narrative.
it.
They're going to try to do it, but I don't think it's going to work very well.
Nope. Sports is dying. News is dying out. Praise be. Let it die. That's what I say.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Robert. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your updates. You're just like always amazing. And I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jay. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching Reality Check. Please hit subscribe and share and all that other stuff. And I'll be back very soon with another show. Thanks for watching.